have some fur
and look kind of creepy and weird.
Probably attack things that are big in its territory.
And if anybody hasn't done this, so the bulk of this theory is that it is indeed a sick bear with mange. And if you have not seen a picture of a bear with mange before, it is nightmare-inducing. And I want everybody to pause the podcast, unless you're driving, at which point get to your destination before you do this.
No. Just slam on your brakes.
Just stop right where you are.
Right,
everybody does it to me. Why shouldn't you do that to them? Yeah.
But bear with mange, and they are freakish looking, and it is really scary. And I could see how something looking like that could scare the holy hell out of somebody.
Sure.
And in the dark, especially, if it's not rabbit isn't the right word, but if it's angry and it's upset and it's cranky and it comes after you, I could see how that would scare the living daylights out of you, and you wouldn't know what you were looking at.
Oh, sure. And the black bears they have there actually they don't usually, but they can get quite large.
Yeah.
It's not unheard of at all.
And if you think about these things, if there's one of these living in the swamp, if it's a bear in the swamp in general, we can look at this two ways. Is if it's not sick, but it's swimming around in brackish water, ucky water that's full of organic material, that could stain it, or it's fur, or it could just have that on it when it stands up to make it look greenish. And animals can get stained by their environment. Did you guys see the Cheeto colored alligator the other day that I put up on our
I saw that.
Facebook?
Yeah,
that stuff happens.
Or sorry, just to toss out there, albino animals do happen.
Mm-hmm.
So if it were a white animal, that
might be more prone to staining. They're looking dirty and weird. Yeah, so this does happen. And then, like I said, if it's then actually got mange and it's in that environment and those things are affecting the color of it, that would make its skin look that weird greenish, brownish, mottled color.
They do not look like bears when they don't have fur. They just don't.
No, they're kind of creepy.
They look like some weird nightmare animal.
The only one that I saw that looked like a bear was an actual cub. Little itty bitty cute cub.
I saw that
looked
one
like a baby
too,
cub. But
except for also after you look at it for a second.
It took a minute.
Yeah, you look at it and you're like,
oh,
and then you're like, oh yeah, no, that's a bear. I see it now. They really don't. They can really be really scary. And
So bear, sure. I'm liking bear.
And if you think about the damage that was done to parked cars, you look at the images of that Dodge van that was chewed up, and then you look at some of the other stuff that was done. The only thing in that area besides somebody having what's a Great Dane or something that really had a chewing problem. A bear is the only thing that I can think of that could punch through the hood of the front of the hood of a vehicle and tear the molding off and chew up the metal. It's the only thing I can really think of that would be able to do that kind of damage.
Dog. I'd never seen any dog, big or small, attack a car before and try to chew on it.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah.
Devin is showing us a picture of a car fender that is being chewed apart by a rather large dog.
I would say it's like a feral dog.
Yeah,
maybe coyote, again, sort of.
But again, that's a fairly decent sized dog.
I love it.
He's
totally trashing the car. He's going for their windshield wipers too. I love it.
But to go for the minivan, to get the hood like it did, and to chew all that off, that's a taller animal. It's a weird angle for a dog to be up at. So yes, it could be a dog.
No, I don't think so. I've seen the kind of damage that bears can do to things. And they are strong.
And they have huge, sharp claws.
Mm-hmm.
Although, again, I wouldn't necessarily say that it's healthy behavior from a healthy, stable animal.
Oh, no.
But again, if we're talking an animal that's suffering, especially if...
They do weird things to try to relieve the
they get confused, but
or they're hungry because they're sick and they can't really go out and do their, feed themselves normally.
Yeah, a minivan. Was there food in the minivan? Was he trying to?
I have no idea.
I've seen pictures.
The engine compartment, or the front engine area of the
Was
van.
there an animal that crawled in there and the bear was trying to get at? I've seen there are pictures out there.
That's a good point, because these people, if you watch the interview of the lady, she talks about the what was her name?
Way, I think, the Ways.
Way was her last name. Yeah, but one of the things that she talks about is Mary. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Mary says that she looked out the window and they had 7 cats who all lived on their front porch, and all their blankets and pillows were spread everywhere, and there were no more cats.
Mm-hmm.
All the cats were gone. So that's a good point, Devin, is it may have been going after a cat that had crawled up into the engine compartment to hide.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought about
It
that.
could also be that they converted it to run on like vegetable oil, and they were getting their oil from McDonald's. It
Not
smelled
in the 80s, man.
The whole car smelled like French fries.
Not in the
Yeah.
80s.
What bear doesn't like French fries?
Yeah.
That's a modern hippie thing, not
Yeah.
an old hippie
I know.
thing.
Yeah, I mean, overall, there are a lot of reasons that this could have happened, and I like this theory a lot.
Yeah.
Especially with this time frame too.
Like in a 6-month year.
I mean, for me, what that sounds like is like there was a yearling bear who was out trying to make its own little patch of territory. Thank you. And he was sick, and so he was there, and then he died probably because he was so sick, and so they petered off. But that seems like about the time of year where those bears have to go off and fend for themselves. So.
Maybe.
That would explain why it wasn't happening really before and didn't happen
Yeah,
after.
I mean, or it could have just been a bear looking for territory that happened to come through the area and was sick for whatever reason. I mean, there's a million ways it could happen.
Even animals can go insane too. It's not just people that go nuts.
Yeah, I mean, have you ever seen the poor polar bears at the zoo sometimes?
Oh yeah, they're not happy.
No.
Except for the ones at the Oregon Zoo.
Those are the ones I'm talking about. Okie doke. Well, we've done enough talking about bears. We've talked about lizards. Now let's talk about reptilians. 'Cause that's our next theory.
Like the reptilian.
The reptilian.
Yeah.
Okay, because now it's time to go to Crazy Town, boys and girls. Does anybody remember back during the election, before Ted Cruz was believed to be the Zodiac Killer, he was believed to be a lizard man?
Yeah.
Okay, well, for those of you who don't worry about it. You're better off not knowing.
I just want to read you guys a quote that's pertinent to this.
Oh, okay.
Quote, as 12 million Americans know, the U.S. government is run by lizard people, or to be scientifically accurate, reptilians.
Yep.
Who said that?
I don't know, some people in the Atlantic.
Oh, okay.
Because it's pertinent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, 12 million people know this. It's got to be real.
Yeah, it's totally a well-guarded secret.
Yeah.
So, as Devin has just let us know, there are people in this world who believe that our government is run by a super secret race of reptilians.
All governments.
Yeah, the entire world is run by
Our
these
governments,
guys.
our human governments, our entire global economy and governments, it's all run by this super secret race of these reptilian creatures that live in underground bases all over the world. And by the way, they're able to change their shape at will, so they are shapeshifters.
Yeah.
They happen to be about 7 or 8 foot tall, which is rather convenient. And they've managed to infiltrate all of the highest levels of government and industry.
Yeah.
And that they're in control.
Yeah, actually, the documentary TV show from the BBC, Doctor Who, did an episode on this.
Oh, did they?
Yeah,
I never saw
but
that one.
unfortunately, they don't, that species that they exposed can't shift. They have to fit into spacesuits, basically, that are just human shaped.
They're the ones that have the weird sucker arms.
No.
Okay. Well, let's go back to reality here.
Oh, back to...
Yeah, 'cause we need
sorry.
to talk about the real reptilians.
Well, the thing about it is, the reptilians too, they're not necessarily shapeshifters like, say, werewolves and things like that. If you're possessed of that kind of alien technology, you can have a holographic projector that can actually alter your appearance radically
Yeah.
and make you look like a human being.
However they're going about it, they are changing their appearance from a 7 to 8 foot tall reptile creature
Into Ted Cruz.
Ted Cruz.
Yeah. No, it was Obama.
And Obama.
Okay. And Obama.
And Margaret Thatcher and the Queen of England. And
that's why she's living so long.
Yeah, that's how she's lived so long. Okay. So it turns out that the idea of reptilian humanoids, it's not that old of an idea in all intents and purposes.
It came about with UFOs, right?
It came about with UFOs. Before that, like, reptiles were not part of any kind of really robust lore. There wasn't a real good lore around them.
Yeah, it's crazy how conspiracy theories seem to have only come around after we got really comfortable in life.
Yeah.
And also after we got mass media.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
So it happened around the 40s, the UFO craze, and the reptilians didn't really get a tribute, or reptilian creatures, humanoid creatures, didn't really get the level of power associated with them that we see today until the late 90s, when a guy by the name of David Icke published a book called The Robots' Rebellion.
Yeah.
Now, for people who don't know, David Icke, he in the 70s was a writer, and then through the 80s he was on the BBC on a couple of different programs. And then at some point in the 80s, it was right around the late 80s or early 90s.
He had an awakening.
I was going to say he took a turn around the bend, but you were probably putting it much nicer than I am. Mm-hmm. He went on to another show, at which point he told everybody that he was actually the son of God and that the world would end that year.
Yeah, no, he either went around the bend or he just decided there was more money in that kind of stuff.
And as of today, the world has not yet ended, so I'm not sure exactly what happened there.
Well, he's obviously a reasonableist.
Yeah, he's not the first person to predict the end of the world.
No, he's not. He's not. But so apparently what Icke does is in the late 80s and early 90s, he starts talking and then writing about a lot of different things, like automatic writing and messages that he's getting, like psychic experiences that he's having.
Are you skeptical about that stuff?
I've said on more than one occasion that I'm skeptical about that stuff.
I got to tell you about automatic writing. Now, there's times I sat down, like to say, even write a script for this episode, and I'll a little later look down at the page what I've written, and it's just a bunch of tasteless crap. And and so I know it happens.
So to clarify, what is automatic writing?
Automatic writing is where you put down the pen and you don't try to write anything. It's at least the way I understand automatic writing. And then your hand, as if possessed by another being, begins to write things where it says, red rum, kill your wife, you will get the insurance, nobody will figure it out. Yeah, mail her this letter now, it's awesome.
Okay, so I can tell you that mine always looks like gibberish.
Yeah.
Because it's not actual words.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's words, just not in your language.
So
that's true.
You're channeling another being here, dude.
Icke starts doing this, and he starts having these experiences.
Wait, is he writing books in automatic writing? Because if so, I have a lucrative new business opportunity for him.
So what puts him on the map is he's doing this stuff, and then a large alien force controlling our world governments. And he begins to come up with his theories about the reptilians and their shape-shifting abilities. And he starts writing books about it. Over time, it's kind of like a footnote in the early 90s in his books, and then it becomes more and more and more
he starts to
part
develop
of it.
Yeah.
Yes. By the way, as a side note, have either of you looked at, this is the funniest thing, I love Wikipedia sometimes for the drawings that are on there. Have you looked at the reptilian drawings on Wikipedia?
Reptilians for the reptilians that control the human race.
So don't worry about, don't Google this, Devin.
I'm doing it.
I'm going to describe describe this. There is a reptilian creature that is a nice outline and got some gills, and then there's a human man standing next to it in the same line drawing style. And what I want to know is why they decided that they had to include genitals on the human man,
but not on the reptile.
There's nothing like that on the reptilian.
Well, reptiles don't have external genitalia.
So why in the hell?
Because humans do.
Well, I didn't need to see the guy's junk, Like, I would do.
It's the weirdest thing to include. But
I have a lot of questions about
there's
drawing.
a lot of questions about that. But I'll be honest. Listen, Ike does he says some things. He makes some claims. He does a lot of things. And I don't even begin to understand. I mean, I've watched videos and read a little bit of his stuff, and I'm not tracking with it. So to give him his due and to try and give a third-party explanation of what David Icke thinks, I found something that is it's a modified synopsis of his belief, and so I'm going to just read that.
Is this from Wikipedia, or where is it from?
This is from some other news article stuff. It's a conglomeration of stuff.
Okay.
So this says, quote, Icke argues that humanity has been genetically manipulated by the Babylonian Brotherhood, a hybrid race of human extraterrestrial reptilians, also known as the Illuminati.
Oh, those guys.
He briefly introduced the extraterrestrial hypothesis in his book, The Robots' Rebellion, and expanded it in And the Truth Shall Set You Free, citing some other books. And then in The Biggest Secret, which he published in 1999, Icke identified the Brotherhood as descendants of reptilians from the constellation Draco, who live in caverns inside the Earth. They are the deities known as the, I'm gonna butcher this, Anunnaki in the Babylonian creation myth.
That's
End quote.
Accurate pronunciation, actually.
So,
why do they live in caverns? Do they like it down there? Or are they hiding?
I'm guessing it has to do something with the fact that they're reptiles. I have no idea why they live in caves.
Yeah, so the theory of directed evolution is not one that is unpopular. There are a lot of people in this world who believe in directed evolution.
Mm-hmm.
But this idea of commingling evolution and that the ruling race is reptilian is, as our fans like to hear me say, the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
Mm-hmm. It's a little guano crazy.
It's super guano crazy.
Well, you gotta, I'm looking for rhyme or reason here in their big genetic modification plan, because are they trying to make us smarter, or are they trying to make us dumber?
Dumber.
Oh, is that?
We're
easier to rule.
That might be.
We are sheeple.
Yeah.
We are sheeple, my friend.
That must be it, yeah.
That is the reason that they are doing what they are doing to us. Now, what they are harvesting from us, or getting from this venture of, cultivating the human race, I don't know. I haven't gone that far into Ike's stuff.
Actually,
it's probably a food source. I know.
No, not even necessarily that. It might be that they don't want to exterminate us because they would feel kind of bad about it, but at the same time, they want to sort of negate us as a threat to them. A dumb humanity is a humanity that's unlikely to reach the stars and colonize the galaxy and be a threat to their galactic empire.
Maybe.
And so it actually makes a lot of sense. They're being sort of humanitarian, but at the same time, they're keeping us in our place and on our planet.
I can shed a little light onto the directed evolution theory.
Okay, yeah, have at it, please.
Oftentimes people... The theory goes is that it's a alien race that is otherwise extinct in this world. So they came here to try to cultivate a new kind of their species, and it kind of failed, but they ended up commingling or directing us in a certain way, but that those aliens are otherwise extinct in the universe.
Everywhere else except on Earth.
Mm-hmm.
And actually,
the Watchers.
Yeah.
So the reptilians, who are basically our Watchers or our shepherds.
Yeah, but that like some sort of intergalactic war or something like that, it made all of the others extinct.
Okay, but
I don't understand.
One of many.
They're extinct here on Earth too, though, right? Because they've crossbred with humanity.
Well, yeah.
Okay,
but they're still better than us.
They're still bigger and smarter and faster and all that stuff. Sure.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Okay.
And that, those theories usually come that they the first interaction with alien was like Homo sapien, not the first little inkling of a little thing of life. It was
first thing in the primordial ooze.
Yeah, I mean, it's how a lot of people make the leap from like, how did we stop being animals and start being humans, right? How did we get our intellectual cognition? Yeah,
cognition work.
Anyway, so that's kind of where people land a lot.
So
all you got to do is
to bring us back to our actual story of the day.
Oh, Ike.
Yeah,
yes.
Talk about Ike.
Well, no, the lizard man of Scapor Swamp. The reason that I looked at Ike and his reptilian stuff is let's again suspend all the disbelief that we've already thrown out there, and let's say, okay, David Icke is right. Well, then maybe this is a situation where there was one of the members of that species, let's say a teenager. You know, the teenagers are always not playing ball.
He was on Rumspringa.
Something like that. And it is, you know what? I hate those stupid humans, and I am going to screw with some stupid humans, and chases a human in their actual form. Or maybe this is their way of playing a huge practical joke on the human race, and it explains Bigfoot and the lizard man of Scapor Swamp and the chupacabra and all these and the Mothman and all these other cryptids are, okay, listen, you have a free pass for a month. Take a form, pick it, screw with them, and then you're done. You can't do it anymore.
Alternately, they're the insane ones.
Who don't get caught right away, and then they're put down by their own species. Yeah,
they're put down or locked up. Yeah,
they're hauled back and put into their their scaly padded room.
Well, if you think about it, it could be a form of inoculation too, because accidents happen. Your little projector fails, and suddenly revealing your true lizard form. Accidents happen, and so if you go out there and you create all these hoaxes like Bigfoot, Lizard Man, whatever. You create all this stuff, this hoo-ha, and so if somebody actually sees you in your true lizard form, nobody's going to believe you.
Unless it happens on the floor of Congress.
Yeah, exactly.
Then you've got a really big problem.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think those guys, they probably really, really carefully check their little projectors.
Well, that's why they have presidential aides.
Right.
Yeah.
And maybe that's it. But the point is that either this is, somebody, one of these creatures in the Ike universe having fun at our expense, or breaking the rules and eventually getting caught and locked away, which is why the sightings of the Lizard Man of Scapor Swamp doing what the Lizard Man of Scapor Swamp did in the beginning haven't happened anymore. So, I mean, I don't know. But that's the way this theory is running.
Yeah.
Anything to add to it?
It was a bear.
It was a sick yogi.
It was a sick yogi, yeah.
Not the same instance, or the same thing happened every time. In one case, it was probably a bear, maybe two, and then the rest of it was people made it up, or they imagined it, or they were high.
Well, and like I said before, I mean, if you watch some of those videos, it is very, very clearly a dude walking through the woods, and somebody else has a flashlight shined on them as they're moving through the woods. It is so blatantly clear.
Well, it's not that clear, actually. They're so tiny in the distance. Like the guy, the hunter.
Well, no, the one in the dark with the flashlight that I'm talking about, that was very clearly somebody in a suit.
Oh, yeah. But like the one that was taken by the hunter where he's off in the distance, it's like, maybe he was using an older, crappier cell phone. He must have been, I guess. But
or somebody compressed that video to optimize it.
It was like 2015 when he took the video, right? Yeah, and so why didn't he zoom in?
Well, maybe that's why it was so bad.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Have you ever taken a picture when you zoomed in on your cell phone? They're terrible.
The quality definitely degrades, but I mean, still.
Especially if it's in the dark.
Which this one was not. This was a daytime video.
Oh, that's right.
The one Joe's talking about is the daytime, but the one I'm talking about is the nighttime.
Yeah, but he was not zoomed in. I mean,
no.
Yeah, not at all.
No,
and
I think the whole thing is silly. So that's really, that's where the scales end. So I think what we need to do now is take care of a little bit of end of show business here.
Yeah.
If you want to read some of the links that we have for research on this story, you can go to our website, which is thinkingsidewayspodcast.com. On there, we will have, like I said, the research for this story, and you can stream this or download from our website. You can do that with all of the stories. On the website, we also now have the full list of all stories that we have covered, and with links directly to those, so you can use that to check to see if we've done a story, because I know it's kind of hard to look
through a lot of pages.
Yeah, in the streaming sites and iTunes, tough. It can be a pain to find stuff, so we've created that in the website for you to look. So take a look at that before you send a story suggestion, because we may have done it already.
And of course,
we've been doing so many of them.
We've had thousands and thousands, but maybe not. But of course, we also have links on our website to merch. You can buy merch.
We do. So on the website, on the right-hand side, there is a section for Zazzle and Redbubble to get shirts and mugs and phone cases and all of that good stuff. That's all right there on the website. Now you can stream from our website. You can download from iTunes. You can stream from Google Play and Stitcher and all of those places. Wherever you're getting the show from, if you're able to subscribe, do so. And even more importantly, if you're able to rate and leave a review, that is fantastic. That's what helps other people find the show. We're on social media. We are on Facebook with the page in the group. We are on Twitter, Thinkin' Sideways without the G in the middle, courtesy of a character limit. And we are on Reddit. There are no character limits there, so we are Thinkin' Sideways.
The best podcast in the entire world. Look us up.
Yeah,
That's actually not part of our Reddit name, but that's cool. We have a email address if you want to get in contact with us to talk about this episode, or theories, or other stories, or share stories, or you have constructive criticism.
Or you are the Lizard Man.
Or you're the Lizard Man and you want to tell your story, you're welcome to do that. Our email address is thinkingsidewayspodcast@gmail.com. And I believe that is all of the stuff that I've got here. All right, well, this has been a soggy one, but we will talk to you guys next week.
Back to the swamp for me.
Bye, guys.
Thinking Sideways is not brought to you by
a Netflix queue made up entirely of rom-coms.
Instead, it's supported by the generous contributions of people like you, our listeners, on Patreon. Visit patreon.com/Thinking Sideways to learn more.
Thinking Sideways.
I don't understand.
Does not compute.
You never know.
Insufficient data to formulate a reply.
What?
Stories of things we simply don't know the answer to.
Hey guys, so sorry. In a few seconds you're gonna hear us start talking again, but you're not gonna be able to hear me super well because somebody
whose initials are Steve
bumped my volume way down. So sorry about that. Technical difficulties. Obviously we've got that figured out. Shouldn't happen
Fixed it as best
again.
we could.
So sorry, it sounds a little rough and weird. We did the best we could, but like I said,
Won't happen again, I promise. I'm sorry.
shoestring budget and everything. So here we go.
Hey everybody, and welcome again to another episode of Thinking Sideways. I am Steve, as always, joined by
Devin
and Joe.
And once again, we have another mystery for you. This week, we are going to be talking about the Long Island serial killer, a.k.a. the Gilgo Beach serial killer, a.k.a. the Craigslist serial killer.
Okay, so are we talking about a serial killer?
We are talking about a serial killer.
Thanks for clearing that up.
And just a quick word of warning to everybody. It's a serial killer who focuses primarily on women, so we're going to be talking about the killing of women and a child. The story involves drug use and prostitution, so if those are triggers, please turn us off now. Or if you've got little ears, aka children around, probably not the time to have this one on. Save us for another time.
In other words, it's the kind of episode that most of you weirdos love.
Exactly.
It kind of is.
Yeah.
And speaking of weirdos, this story was suggested by a couple of our listeners. This was under the different names. It came through a couple of times. I found it on the list. But Jeanette and Renee are the first ones that had it on the list.
Okay.
So let's do a quick overview of the story, because this one's actually kind of a big, long one.
It involves a lot of dead bodies. That's about all you need to know.
Our story revolves around the discovery of several sets of remains. About a dozen women were found on the south side of Long Island, New York, between 2010 and 2011. And the bodies were found primarily on the southern barrier island, which is Oak Island, though a few remains were found on Fire Island, which is to the east, and then some were also found further in the town of, I believe it's Manorville is the proper pronunciation there. The bodies that were found belonged to women who had been missing since between roughly 1996 to 2010. There's some weak connections between them, but aside from their occupations and some particular habits that involve substances that are illegal, there isn't a whole lot to connect these women.
Well, not as a whole, but among the sets of remains, there's a lot to connect some smaller subsets.
Yes. And that's why we're going to get into the story here. And this one I've kind of organized a little bit different than I've done them in the past. I've actually broken this into what I'm going to refer to as chapters, because there's several chapters, and we've got a lot of players, so we should probably just jump right in.
Yeah, this tome in front of me should be divided into chapters.
Well, if I
Bigger.
listed it in bullet points, it'd be 10 pages more.
That's why I do that.
Make it 10 pages more? So it looks like you have a bigger script?
Yeah.
Okay, good to know.
Padding.
All right, chapter 1, we're going to talk about what I refer to as the catalyst disappearance. So a woman by the name of Shannon Gilbert, who was 24 years old, her family, by the way, lives in Ellenville, New York, but Shannon was an adult at the time. She's 24. She didn't live in that town with her family. Instead, I've seen several different places that she lived. She either lived actually in New York City or she lived somewhere in New Jersey. But at the time, she was living with her boyfriend, whose name was Alex.
Did Alex know what she did for a living?
I believe Alex did. Pretty sure that he had an idea based on some calls that he made later on about what's going on here. But on the 1st of May, 2010, Shannon went to meet a client. That client's name was Joseph Brewer, and he lived on Oak Island. And she had a driver take her there that night. His name was Michael Pack. So Shannon and Brewer, they had talked ahead of time. They had agreed that she was going to go to his house for sex. She had, at this point, been, by my best guess, a prostitute for about a year.
Sorry, this might be a dumb question. Pack, was he, like, her personal driver all the time? Was he just, like, a random taxi driver?
Yeah, no, Michael Pack was a fairly regular driver for her.
Okay. So kind of like a security escort sort of thing?
Yeah. The funny thing is that, what Pack wasn't really, like, I would consider a security escort a guy who would hang out and be nearby for most of the time. That wasn't the case with Michael, because what he did is he dropped Shannon off at Brewer's house and then he left. I believe... Yeah, and I believe that's because Brewer was going to pay for many hours of her...
Companionship?
Thank you. Companionship is the term I was looking for.
Time, but yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So say Brewer came to regret his association with her, didn't he?
He did kind of here. Yeah. Because when, from his accounts, from Brewer's accounts, at first, things were fine for the first couple of hours. He said they never actually had sex, but instead they were doing drugs together basically the entire time. Now, there's some unconfirmed reporting on something I'm going to talk about here, and you're actually going to find a lot of unconfirmed reporting in the story.
Shocking.
But it is reported that the pair, Brewer and Shannon, went down the street to another house, which was the resident of that house was the Dr. Peter Hackett, and the doctor had drugs, and they bought more drugs to continue their drug-fueled evening. Can't confirm that or not.
I think that...
Well, the hard part is that they're not talking. Their stories have changed.
I don't know. I just find it hard to believe that Brewer would confess to going and buying illicit drugs from the doctor. That's why I'm having a hard time accepting that.
Well, and that's the thing is that Brewer's been really honest with. He's just done. If the cop said, "I want you to do this," he did it. Like he complied to all requests from the police, and he didn't hide the fact. I mean, I don't know that the cops ever put any charges against him for having an escort coming to his house. He was very blatantly hiring the service of a prostitute.
Yeah, I guess it seems like to me that if somebody comes to your door and says, hey, we heard this woman was with you last night. Hey, it turns out she's missing. And then, a couple weeks later or whatever, they say, oh, it turns out she's horrifically been murdered. Maybe you would say, okay, the drug part, yes. But here's the rest of it, and I had nothing to do with that last time I saw her. She was alive.
Right.
I will give you literally all of the information. I don't want you to think I'm hiding anything from you. But on the other hand, that's also something a really smart thing to do.
True.
That's up to 90% of it.
Yeah, and here's exactly what happens is that, whether they did or did not go to the doctor's house, after several hours, Brewer calls Pack because Shannon is upset and acting, as I've seen it from his description, crazy. She's not happy, and she wants to leave.
There's no history of like bipolar disorder or anything like that with her?
I don't remember anything. I mean, there's so many players in here, I can't remember the specifics of that.
Okay, but that aside, doing
if
drugs all night can have an effect on one's emotions.
There's that too. That's true.
Who knows?
I mean, let's not look at major underlying causes. She's high. If she is truly, as he says, they are doing drugs for hours on end.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She's very, very heavily under the influence at this point.
Yeah.
But what happens is, he calls Pack. Pack shows up. He gets out of the car, and apparently Shannon runs out of the house, stops, sees Pack, turns the other direction, and runs away from him, and starts beating feet through the neighborhoods. Now,
and this was like early hours of the morning.
It's like 4:30,
so still dark, but
yeah, it's like 4 in the morning, something like that.
Yeah, she's knocking on doors and making a racket.
Yeah, and so what happens here is that Brewer just turns around and goes back in his house. He's done. He's finished with this whole deal.
Yeah.
But Pack is driving around looking for Shannon. In the meantime, Shannon is running around the neighborhood, banging on doors. Some of the residents. Well, okay, so most of the residents, they just called 911. They didn't actually open their doors. There is one person who says they opened the door and they let her in, but she didn't stick around long enough to get help before